I'm Murray Aiken, Executive Director of the IQVIA Institute for Human Data Science, and I'm here today with my colleague Jamie Pritchett to introduce you to our new report, Global Oncology Trends 2025. We've subtitled this year's report, Adopting New Therapies as Modalities Shift and Expenditures Rise. And this summarizes, to some extent at least, some of the key findings from our research that's featured in our report. How patients are being treated with newer therapies, the uptake curves for those treatments and how they compare across countries, and their use in earlier lines of therapy. The newer modalities that are coming into focus, including antibody-drug conjugates, bispecifics, radioligand therapies, CAR T-cell therapies, and looking into the pipeline of molecules that are in active clinical development around the world. And we look at the expenditure on these therapies. How much is being spent on cancer drugs? How fast is it increasing? What's the outlook for the next 5 years? How it looks across different regions of the world and across different tumor types. There's a lot of content in the report, 63 exhibits across 75 pages, plenty to digest. And to help with that, I'll ask Jamie here to take you through a few of the highlighted exhibits that are in the report. Over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Murray. As a leading cause of premature death globally, cancer remains an important area for continued investment and, as a result, continues to represent the largest area of clinical research and development. Oncology trial starts increased slightly in 2024 to nearly 2,200, following declines after a peak in 2021 and are up 12% from 2019. Pre-commercial emerging biopharma companies are responsible for 53% of oncology trials, up from 24% a decade ago, and commercial emerging biopharma companies account for an additional 8%. China-headquartered companies are now responsible for 39% of oncology trials, up from only 5% a decade ago, and notably, Chinese companies run 84% of their trials domestically. Oncology research and development has seen an increasing focus on targeted drugs with innovative mechanisms of action over the last decade. Novel modalities, particularly cell and gene therapies, antibody-drug conjugates, and multispecific antibodies reached 35% of total oncology trials in 2024, up from just 10% in 2015. ADC and multispecific antibody trials have both more than tripled in the last 5 years. Other novel modalities are also evolving rapidly, with radioligands and protein degraders showing significant promise. The overall productivity of oncology clinical development has improved by 51% since 2019, but remains lower than the average observed across all disease areas combined. Increasing productivity has been driven by increasing overall program success and declining trial complexity, particularly for solid tumors. The composite success rate for oncology programs rose from 4% in 2023 to 7% in 2024, with overall improvement since 2019 primarily driven by increased solid tumor success. The overall complexity of oncology trials decreased by 9% over the last 5 years, mainly driven by reductions in site and country footprints. The average number of countries with sites in trials has been trending down, driven by an increasing number of single-country trials, especially in China. Multi-country studies represented 37% of trial starts in 2015, but have dropped to 20% in 2024. While single-country studies in China have risen from 7% of global trial starts in 2015 to 40% in 2024. The significant amount of R&D activity in oncology has resulted in a continual pipeline of novel medicine launches to treat cancer. In 2024, 25 oncology novel active substances were launched globally, bringing the total global launches in the last 5 years to 132. The number of new medicine launches does vary across geographies, as not all medicines reach all countries. For example, 31 new oncology medicines launched in the US in the last 5 years are not yet available in Europe, while just one launched in Europe is not yet available in the US. Launches in China accelerated from just 37 from 2015 to 2019 to 84 in the last 5 years, nearly equal to the US. And more than half of these have not yet launched in other markets, beginning a pattern of domestic first or domestic only innovation. These novel medicines are not always viewed as providing significant clinical benefit as evidenced by European health technology assessments. Comparing 337 clinical benefit assessments in Europe for novel oncology drugs approved by the European Medicines Agency from 2014 to 2023, 144, or 43%, had a negative assessment or non quantifiable added benefit. The trend over the past decade has been for progressively fewer positive assessments, with 77% of assessments performed in 2024 resulting in a negative or non quantifiable rating. The consistently poor benefit ratings, combined with their influence on guidelines, reimbursement, and usage in their relevant countries, likely indicate an impact on the uptake of these novel medicines unless follow on indications are viewed more positively. The significant number of novel cancer medicines launched globally has resulted in shifts in how patients are treated. PD-1 and PD-L1 inhibitors have seen wide adoption in the last decade, though per capita use varies across countries and access in many low and middle income countries is limited. As evidence has grown for the efficacy of these medicines, their use has shifted to earlier disease states, earlier lines of therapy, and use across more tumors. Use of targeted medicines such as PD-1 and PD-L1 inhibitors is often influenced by the use of biomarker testing, which has grown over the last 5 years, though varies across geographies. Per capita use of antibody drug conjugates across major developed countries remained low until the last 5 years when use has more than tripled. ADCs are likely to continue to see increasing use as a result of the robust clinical pipeline investigating use in different tumors or disease states, and as both new targets and payloads are tested. Other novel modalities, including bispecific antibodies, radioligands, and CAR T cell therapies, are transforming treatment in difficult to treat cancers, including advanced prostate cancer, multiple myeloma, as well as other hematologic malignancies. However, health systems are not always keeping up with these shifts to novel modalities, and barriers exist that can limit patient access to these promising treatments. Global spending on cancer therapies continues to grow and represents a significant portion of total medicine spending. Spending on cancer medicines rose to $252 billion globally in 2024 and is expected to reach just over $440 billion by 2029. Spending growth is expected to slow beginning in 2027, with a number of small molecules expected to face generics, and lower growth will continue in 2028 and 2029 as the first PD-1 inhibitors face biosimilar competition. This slowing growth is primarily driven by the US, while growth in far emerging and lower income countries is expected to accelerate over the next 5 years as more treatment options reach these countries and access to healthcare improves. Increased spending on novel modalities will offset some of the declines due to losses of exclusivity. Global spending on ADCs has grown on average 39% annually over the last 5 years, reaching $14 billion in 2024, and is expected to more than double by 2029. While spending on bispecific antibodies was modest in 2024, it is expected to increase nearly tenfold through 2029, driven by new launches, expansion to new indications, and use in earlier lines of therapy. ADCs, bispecific antibodies, and cell and gene therapies are expected to account for nearly 20% of oncology spending in 2029, up from 9% in 2024 and 3% in 2019. As a cancer survivor myself, I understand firsthand the physical and emotional toll this disease can take on patients. Fortunately, significant advances in treating cancer over the last decade and shifts toward newer modalities have improved outcomes and reduced some of the burden on patients and their caregivers. However, these shifts may further exacerbate disparities in access to cancer care in low and middle income countries and across demographic groups. We hope the detailed analyses in this report can help facilitate discussions about reducing barriers to ensure all cancer patients, regardless of location or socioeconomic status, can access the most effective treatment options. And now I'll pass it back to Murray.
Thanks, Jamie, for that. And again, for those of you interested, there's a lot more content in the report itself. So I do encourage you to download the report using the QR code on the screen and also to join our mailing list. That's the easiest way to stay informed of our future research and activities.